Let's rank some Big Ten wide receivers. We are getting closer to the 2025 season. We've done teams, we've done quarterbacks, we've done running backs. Now it's time to rank some wide receivers. It's a really interesting group of wide receivers in the Big Ten this year. Four of the top five receivers from last season are off to the NFL, but Jeremiah Smith returns, and that's where we're going to start. Ohio State's number one receiver led the conference in receiving last season with over 1,300 yards, and he is one of the best wide receivers that I've watched. I think when his college career is done, he still has two full seasons left. He will be in the discussion with Julio Jones, and at the college level, Justin Blackman, guys like that Devontae Smith, that changed their teams and changed their programs. And I think Jeremiah Smith is that good. Um, just one of one generational type guy. I personally think the best wide receiver that I've seen since Julio Jones. Um, in my opinion, the best football player in the country as a true sophomore, which you do not see that quite often. I think he'd be the number one overall pick if he was able to come out this year in the 2025 draft. So that is pretty special. Um, Ryan Williams stole the headlines early in the year, but Jeremiah Smith is far and above the best wide receiver in the country and one of the best we've seen in quite some time. I'll be fascinated to see how he does with Julian Sand as his quarterback this year, but if you say anyone else the best receiver in the conference, you simply have not watched Jeremiah Smith play football. At number two, another Ohio State wide receiver. In the last decade, Ohio State has dominated passing the football in the Big Ten. Um, you had Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, and even if you go further back than that, um, I'm blanking on who was before that, but just that group as a whole, really hard to argue with the run that they've been on. And I think Carnell Tate's going to be a guy who's in the first round discussion by the end of the year. I think with a higher ceiling quarterback like Julian Sand compared to a Will Howard, I think we could see definitely 2,000-yard receivers. I think any other team would take Tate as their number one option, so that's why he's number two. I don't think he's as generational as Jeremiah Smith, but if Jeremiah Smith didn't exist, I think Ohio State would be very comfortable with him as their number one receiver. So that's why I got him at number two. Number three, Evan Stewart, a five-star high school prospect, originally went to A&M, transferred to Oregon last year. Didn't break out to be that elite number one option that we kind of thought he could be. I think he might do that this year. I think Oregon will. They're going to be a really interesting team because they have Dante Moore, who's still a bit of a wild card, a bit of an unknown. But I think he'll raise the ceiling of a guy like Stewart, and I think we'll see Stewart get over 1,000 yards this year, and I think we'll see him play his best football. At number three, and this tier before overall, Jacoby Lane from USC, guy who impressed a lot last year. I think he had 12 touchdowns. I think he'll be USC's number one. You could argue Makai Lemon, and I think it wouldn't shock me if Makai Lemon had more yards, and we'll get to him later. But Jacoby Lane, I think he's in for a big year. USC is the one team I really like this year in the Big Ten. I think they'll surprise some people, and I think Lane is a big reason why. All right, at number five, we have Elijah Surratt, who is the number two leading returning receiver in the conference behind Smith. And Indiana also has changed at quarterback. It is now Fernando Mendoza and not Curtis Rourke. I think Elijah Surratt should definitely be around 1,000 yards this year. I'd be pretty surprised if he wasn't. I think he'll have a big year, clearly in the second tier. And lastly, got a transfer from Syracuse, probably Penn State's best wide receiver since maybe top of my head, KJ Hamler. Um, you could maybe even go back further. I'm not going to go that far yet, but certainly their best receiver since KJ Hamler, Trevor Pena from Syracuse, a spring transporter window pickup, true number one. And I think he'll flirt with 1,000 yards this year with Drew Aller at the helm. No more Tyler Warren. I think they'll utilize their receivers a little bit more. Big time pickup. And if Penn State gets back to the playoff, Pena is going to be a big reason why. And the five players in this tier are all number one talents that I think any team's comfortable with them at their number one. Next on this list, Donovan McCulley, a really interesting guy in this discussion. Um, he sat out. He redshirted last year at Indiana. He was their leading receiver in 2023, and now he's Michigan's top receiver. Michigan will be interesting with Bryce Underwood. I could foresee them not throwing the ball a whole lot and leaning on Justice Haynes a lot this year. So maybe they don't have a receiver that gets even around 1,000 yards. But if someone does, it's going to be McCulley. He by far has the highest ceiling, in my opinion. Kind of a wild card in this tier. I could have put him a little bit lower, but I have him at number 7. Dane Key, another transfer at Nebraska. He's my pick to lead the team in receiving this year. A lot of people are going to say Ja'Cory Barney, a guy that I might have a little low looking at this, but I think Dane Key, big pickup for Dylan Raiola, and I think he'll have a big year. Devontae Ross, another transfer pickup for Penn State. Before they got Pena, a lot of people thought Ross could have a big year from Troy. I think he's a really, really solid number 2, and I think he'd be a number 1 on a lot of teams. And Penn State made some clear upgrades at receiver. Makai Lemon at USC, another guy who I think could be in line for a big year. I think USC might be a running team this year. I like their running backs almost more than the receivers, but look, Lemon's really good, and he'd be a number 1 on a lot of teams, and putting him firmly in the middle of this tier. Next, Griffin Wild might be the most underrated transfer portal pickup at receiver in the conference. From South Dakota State. He was great last year with the Jackrabbits. I really like the low risk, a high reward portal pickups that Northwestern had with him and Preston Stone. I like Northwestern's process when it comes to team building, but they might just be a couple guys short. I think Wild could quietly have a really solid year with Stone. So I think he's hiding right here in this tier. A lot of people they're gonna be like, whoa, Northwestern has a receiver there, but I think he's a legit number 1 and pretty interesting talent. Denzel Boston Jr., another guy from Washington who came on at the end of last year, and I think he'll be the Huskies' number 1 guy this year with Damon Williams Jr. throwing him the rock. I could be overlooking him a little bit. He's another guy who I think could end at the top of this tier. All of these guys in this third tier, I could see them ending in any which direction. That's why I kind of bunched them all together. But Boston could be in for a big year. And now we got Minnesota's first guy on the list, Javon Tracy, the transfer from Miami of Ohio. I think he's a wide receiver 1 talent. Did really good in the MAC. Didn't have 1,000 yards, which puts him below Wild in my opinion. I don't think I think South Dakota State would compete in the MAC, so that's kind of the same level of competition. You get what I'm saying. But Big Ten's different ball game, and Tracy, I think I'm very confident will be Minnesota's leading receiver this year, and he has the potential to get it up to 1,000 yards, but maybe that's next year. I talked about this a little bit, but I still think the Gophers window they're building for next season. And Tracy having 2 years of eligibility, I think will give them that. And if he gets that rapport with Drake Lindsey and at the end of the year, maybe gets a couple 100-yard games, Maybe he's sitting at 700, 800 yards at the end of the year, and you're like, next year he could be one of the best in the conference. So puts him at 13. And then we got DT Sheffield at Rutgers, number one guy, in my opinion. Transfer from North Texas. Solid number one option for eighth and Cali McManus. And then the last guy in this tier, we got Hudson Clement, transfer from West Virginia. Another reason why I'm lower on Illinois than the consensus. I don't like their skill position players. I think their wide receivers are questionable. I think their running backs are questionable. And I don't love Luke Altmaier. Everyone's talking up Illinois like they're this dark horse contender in the conference, and I'm not buying it. My guess, um, top of my head, I don't know what their win total over under is, but if it's 7.5, it wouldn't shock me if they went 7-5 this year. They got a doable schedule, so I see where people are coming from, but I got Hudson Clement at 15. And then this next tier, kind of guys who could be wide receiver ones, but they have some question marks. If it's their offensive system holding them back, guys in front of them, or anything else that they just might have some circumstances holding them back. Vinny Anthony the second, really talented guy at Wisconsin. But Wisconsin just, I don't think is going to throw the ball a whole lot this year. So he might lead the team in receiving, which might be like 600 yards. So I think he has high floor, low ceiling. Sam Phillips, transfer from Chattanooga. Exact same thing. If he was on any other team in the conference outside of Wisconsin and Iowa, I think maybe he could have a good year. I think Phillips is Iowa's best receiver, but Iowa's best receiver most years gets like 500 yards. So, again, high floor, low ceiling. Nick Marsh, a guy who I might be a little low on. Really underrated last year at Michigan State. And if Aiden Childs takes that next step, if the Spartans take that next step with Jonathan Smith, Marsh could be a sneaky 1,000-yard guy this year. So I'd keep an eye out on him, but I'm not buying Michigan State just yet. So that's why I'm a little low on him still. Naziah Hunter, transfer from Cal to Nebraska, another big pickup they had in the offseason. If there's one thing I would maybe do, I think it'd be switch Ja'Cory Barney Jr. and Naziah Hunter. But I didn't, and I've released this list, so I'll stick with my opinion. I love to second guess myself, but Naziah Hunter, talented guy. I think he could be a really good number two. I just don't know if he has that number one potential. And being behind Dane Key and maybe even Ja'Cory Barney Jr. limits his ceiling, which puts him in this tier for me. And then Jalil Farrak from Maryland. Maryland likes to throw the football. With Mike Locksley, they always have, and they always will. Ty Felton moving on. They need a guy to fill that void. They might be a little bit more of a running team this year with Malik Washington at quarterback, so I think system might hurt him a little bit, but I'm pretty confident he'll be their number one receiver. And I don't think you can have a number one receiver on Maryland while they have Mike Locksley outside the top 20. So he's at 20 for me. And then lastly, Brandon Innes, another guy who it's situation for him. Ohio State's loaded at receiver. They have the two best receivers in the conference. Innes could be a number one on some teams. So he's limited there, in my opinion. All right. I'm going to kind of chunk these together now. We're getting to the bottom, and I'll talk about guys who stand out to me. Amari Kelly could be a really underrated transfer pickup. Um, I get the school of these two guys mixed up. I think Krishan McKay is from Kent State, but Michigan State made some interesting additions to their transfer portal or to the receiver room from the transfer portal. Kelly could be a sneaky one. They could have a sneaky receiver room. And then Gary Bryant Jr., good number two. Titus Mackay. Adamala, didn't say that name right, but UCLA is a sneaky team here. If they're throwing the rock well with Nico Maliava, I think TMA could have a big year. Omar Cooper Jr. at Indiana could be a solid number two. If they're really slinging the rock, But again, he's number two behind Surratt, so I don't think he's gonna have a huge year. And then this running out this next tier or this current tier. Um, Trey Kekahuna, I believe that's how you say it. Um, sound like my dad now, but really talented guy who came out at the end of the year last year. I just again don't think Wisconsin's going to throw the ball enough. If he was on Ohio State as their number three, ooh, he'd be a great number three. But that's the situation thing. I love his talent. Michael Jackson, the third on Purdue, interesting talent from Georgia. I just don't think Purdue is going to be good enough. And then I mentioned Ja'Cory Barney Jr. He was really good as a true freshman, but Nebraska added both these transfer portal guys. So to lean on the opinion I originally had, I think they could look more towards those transfer portal guys as guys with more experience, and maybe I don't know. Dylan Raiola has that experience with Barney. Maybe he leans on that. That'll be an interesting thing to follow with Nebraska. One of those swing teams for sure. In the next tier, two guys I love their talent. I'd want them on my football team, but I think they kind of have high ceiling, also a really low floor. Samaj Morgan, not Moigan, forgot an R in that name. Really interesting talent, but again, probably number two at best on Michigan, and you could maybe even argue he's three or four. Kind of a gadget guy that they use kind of out of the slot, maybe give him a few handoffs. He's maybe going to return kicks. Like him, um, I think he could take it to the house anytime he touches the ball, but he could also end the year with 200 yards, and I wouldn't be that surprised. Similar thing with Malik Benson. JUCO guy. He's kind of bounced all over. Once committed to Alabama, Florida State. Now he's at Oregon. I think he's kind of their go ball guy that they're gonna. Dante Moore does have an arm, and if they're throwing the Hail Mary, I think they're throwing it to Benson, and so he could maybe have like 5 60-yard touchdowns or something, or maybe he just has one and he ends the year with 150 yards. So two guys that I like, but could just be all over the place. And then this next tier is solid number twos. I think all these teams are happy with this guy as their number two. Um, it would be the third receiver we talked about for USC, but I think they have depth at that position. So if you know what I mean. But Logan Loya, a guy that I really like for the Gophers. I think he's going to be a chain mover. He's a guy who knows how to get open. I don't think he's gonna have like many 100-yard games, but he's gonna. I think he's gonna have a lot of like 5 catches, 43 yards, and four of those are for first downs. And those are guys you need in your receiver room. So really like that pickup again for Minnesota and Quasi Gilmer on UCLA, another guy who I think could be underrated. Um, and that kind of rounds out this group. And then the next tier, we got I forgot what I called this one in my write up on Gophers on SI, but we'll talk about Lemecki Brockington from the Gophers. Um, I th- I think he has the experience and he really good run blocker, and he's a guy you want on your football team. But I mean, at this point of his career, I think we kind of know who he is, and I think he's a good number three. But again, he's another guy. I don't know if he's going to have a 100-yard receiving game. He can get you 4 or 5 catches when you're in a pinch, but when you're at Wrigley Field in October playing Northwestern, are you going to be giving the rock to Lemecki? I don't know. You're going to want to feed Darius Taylor, feed AJ Turner, get those chain moving passes to Logan Loya. I think Lemecki is a good deep threat. Um, he's struggled with injuries at times too, so that has to knock him down a little bit, but a good talent nonetheless. And then this last tier, guys that are kind of unknowns. Seth Anderson's played a little bit, but transfer from Charleston Southern, had 100 yards last year. I just love Nitro Tuggle. That dude's name is tremendous. I believe another transfer from Georgia to Purdue. Purdue's whole team is freaking transfers. But other two guys, Caleb Webb and Chase Farrell, both transfers who barely played at their first schools, but interesting talents. So that's what we got for the top 50 receivers in the Big Ten Conference. Um, Probably not going to do a position ranking next week. Biggest recruiting weekend of the year for the Gophers, so probably going to do a recruiting video. Might get them both in still. We'll see. We'll see what I'm feeling. Make sure you like this video, helps us get found. Subscribe to the channel for any other Minnesota sports topics and discussions. Follow us on Gophers on SI as well as Timberwolves, Twins, and Vikings. And as always, I appreciate you guys for listening. Until next.